Jonathan was in our last meeting, and he's a product manager for the BioAccord system. He's been with Waters for almost 9 years. Prior to joining Waters, he was a research scientist at Sanofi Adventis.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Scott. I am the product manager for the BioAccord system, and today I'm going to be talking to you about improving organizational efficiency with networked LCMS deployments. So during the course of this presentation, we'll talk about some activity and some recent updates relating to the expansion of biopharmaceutical LCMS networks. We'll talk about this in the context of the BioAccord system, but also relating to QTOF instrumentation also. We'll talk about what a Waters Connect network looks like and what are the specific benefits of a network deployment in biopharmaceutical laboratories. We'll try to put this in the context of a specific worked application example, demonstrating the power and flexibility of a network in a biopharmaceutical environment. And at the end of all the presentations, we have an open question and answer session. So any questions related to this presentation, we should be able to address then. Okay, so we'll now talk a little bit about the recent activity and the updates relating to the expansion of biopharmaceutical LCMS networks. When we launched the BioAccord system back in 2019, we supported up to 3 BioAccord systems on a network configuration. Additionally, we supported 2 BioAccord systems with 1 QTOF on UniFi 1.9 Service Release 4. What I'm going to talk about now is some updates and some activity that's effectively going live in Q2 2021, so this quarter. That relates to the expansion of the BioAccord only network. It also relates to the characterization and monitoring network, so that hybrid between QTOF and BioAccord within the same deployment. It's important to say that this particular activity and the updates that I have on the next 2 slides are part of an overall initiative within Waters to look at the opportunities to expand your efficiency by creating more flexibility and more capacity within an on-premise network. Ultimately, the future for Waters Connect is to deliver a deployment within the cloud. There's no firm timeline for this, so within this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the current updates with respect to on-premise network capacity. Firstly, focusing on the BioAccord only network. You recall we communicated that previously we supported up to 3 BioAccord systems. So available now in Q2 2021 and actually shipping from the start of April, we have Waters Connect with UniFi 1.9 Service Release 13. Now on this installation of software, we support now up to 6 BioAccord systems on a single network. So you can imagine the benefits of this could be transferring methods from method development systems and activities into a more routine analysis, and the ability to deploy multiple systems together for routine analysis and sharing methods and information across those systems on a single network. So moving on to the hybrid network scenario. So that's the ability to place together a QTOF characterization instrument and a BioAccord system for more routine monitoring on a single software platform on a single network deployment. We're excited to say now that as of Q2 2021, and we expect this to be available commercially imminently, both the Xevo G2XS QTOF and the VIA IMS QTOF will be supported on the same software platform and the same mixed network deployment as a BioAccord system. With respect to the capacity that we're describing, we've expanded this to include 2 BioAccord systems with up to 2 QTOFs. So that could be 2 Xevos, 2 Vions, or 1 Xevo plus 1 Vion. So here you can really combine the flexibility and the power of your characterization instrument with the more routine analysis that you may perform on your BioAccord system. And we'll talk a little bit about a worked example of how this may work and what benefits may be provided from this approach later in the presentation. So in this section of the presentation, we're going to talk about the architecture of a Waters Connect network and some of the specific benefits that can be realized in a biopharmaceutical laboratory. Before we discuss some of the specific benefits of a WatersConnect network, I wanted to highlight the anatomy of that network. So there are three architectural layers which stream data from connected systems. The server is where the software is centrally deployed. It's also the deployment layer for the licenses and for the instrument drivers. All of the processing and heavy lifting occurs on the server. The data from each instrument system is safely acquired via an LND device. There is one LND device per QTOF instrument, and a single LND device can actually support up to 2 LCUV systems. The LND device acts as a buffer in the event of any network outage. The client PC simply acts as the visualization layer within the network. So whilst you are reviewing, processing, reporting data via the client PC, all of that activity and processing is going on the network server. Finally, within a WatersConnect network, you can maintain up to 25 active named users with defined roles within that network. A network deployment can significantly increase your organizational efficiency and the ability to collaborate and share information across different scientists and different departments within your organization. At a basic level, you can eliminate user access bottlenecks. So where two scientists are hoping to access the same workstation or remote into the same workstation, you can remove that challenge by having simultaneous multi-user access, whether it's acquisition, processing, or reporting of data via any client on the network. From a project level, considering the information that you may need to compile, assess, and methods and data that you may wish to review, the ability to consolidate information from characterization instruments, monitoring instruments on that same network really increases the collaboration and the ability to quickly make decisions as an organization based upon the data that you're acquiring for that particular project. Compliance is a fundamental pillar of everything that we aim to deliver within WatersConnect. The features and safeguards deployed at a workstation level can now be extended to a central server deployment, so privileges, restrictions, file access can all be handled centrally. Qualification is obviously important in this environment, so you can qualify the software on the server centrally once, rather than doing multiple times on different workstations. Also, the IQ or the OQ can be performed remotely for any system on the network from a given client. Obviously, in this environment, you're subject to internal and external audits, so that central project level data consolidation facilitates that process significantly. Obviously, you also now have a single point for system management and data management. We appreciate that the security of your data is fundamentally important, both in terms of protection against any unforeseen hardware or software issues, but also considering protection against any malicious intent. The architecture of the WatersConnect network establishes the LND or the lab network device as a buffering device, such that if the system is acquiring and the network goes down, the LND stores the data temporarily until such point that the network is re-established, and then data is securely transferred and stored as normal on the server. The WatersConnect server establishes an automatic backup of any records which are inclusive of data, information, methods associated with your projects. This happens typically on a daily basis with a full system backup on a weekly basis. Again, in the event of any unforeseen event, there is an automated system recovery which would re-establish all the records associated with your projects. Waters have invested quite a lot in the last 12 months or so to introduce some enhanced security on WatersConnect platforms via independent authentication. This establishes a common way to authenticate and maintain a single sign-in across all applications, whether they are desktop, web, or potentially in the future, mobile-based. So we talked about some of the practical and project-level efficiency gains that can be experienced by scientists once a WatersConnect network has been deployed. But considering some of the other stakeholders that are involved, there can be real efficiency gains in terms of time, resource, paperwork, considering IT professionals within your companies and system level administrators. So with that central deployment of software licenses, the ability to upgrade the system once rather than upgrade multiple individual workstations, considering user administration and setting all of the privileges, user roles, and access to information centrally rather than doing that on multiple different workstations, and also the ability to add new systems and new users to that network. This is greatly simplified and reduces a lot of additional time, effort, and paperwork for your internal IT and system administrator professionals. Beyond that, there's a return on investment once the network has actually been deployed. So considering future system purchases, the hardware, the licensing, the software, and considering maintenance plans, which are obviously now applicable to a centrally deployed software installation rather than multiple installations across different workstations. Again, there's real return on investment to be had over time following that initial investment in the network. So we've talked a little bit about some of the general benefits of a waters_connect network. We now want to specifically talk about an application example, which is just one of many examples where consolidating information and instrumentation on a network can have a specific benefit in terms of efficiency and decision making. So the case study that we're going to describe here relates to the peptide MEM workflow, and specifically here we're looking at the new peak detection step within that workflow. So imagine a scenario where for a given sample you have a number of new peaks that have been identified versus your control. So what we're going to do here is hone in on one particular peak and go through the exercise of how you may investigate this within a network environment. Okay, so we're going to focus in a little bit more on this new peak that's been identified within this specific sample set. So you can see an extract from the peptide MEM workflow showing the extracted ion chromatogram and the full scan or low energy data associated with that. So peptide MEM as a software application processes and displays the full scan or lower energy data only. However, within a Biocode acquisition for peptide MEM, you are able to acquire in full scan with fragmentation mode, or pseudo MS to the E. By doing this, you have low energy data and high energy data associated with that particular sample set and with that particular injection. So within this workflow, any user, if they have the appropriate permissions, can accept or reject a new peak. But let's say in this specific example, there is a need to do some further investigation looking at that low energy and high energy data. At this point, we will either use LCMS Toolkit, which is a new application delivered on waters_connect for investigation, or we go back into Unify and investigate further. So let's now imagine a waters_connect network deployment to aid with this new peak investigation. So on that network, you have a minimum of one Biocode system, which was used to acquire the original data, and one QTOF instrument, which is typically used for characterization. It may be the same scientist who acquired the Biocode data is performing this investigation, or maybe another scientist, perhaps a more senior scientist, has been recruited to help with this investigation, and they have access to the network and access to the folder structure on that network. So one first step would be to look for the new peak in the existing characterization data on that network QTOF. So comparing the Biocode data with the previously acquired characterization data to look for a match in retention time, high energy spectra, low energy spectra, to see if there's enough there to give you confidence to assign an identity to the new peak. At that point, you may decide to incorporate that new peak into your routine peptide monitoring method. Beyond that, you could reprocess the data which you previously acquired on Biocode system within the peptide mapping workflow, since it contains that high energy and low energy fragmentation. Again, if that's not successful, you could do some further interrogation to look for sequence tags to allow you to optimize or modify that peptide mapping processing method. All of these three steps have been performed with that existing data that has been acquired on the Biocode system. Furthermore, if you haven't been successful so far, an obvious next step would be to use your characterization instrument and to reacquire some data on the QTOF using a more targeted MSMS approach to de novo sequence that peak. So I think in summary, the important thing to highlight here is the fact that within this Waters Connect network with multiple users accessing this and shared instruments, QTOF and Biocode instruments on that network, you have the ability for one single user potentially from one client to go through these steps to really facilitate the process of understanding what this new peak is without having to access different instrumentation on different networks or import information from other instruments. So to summarize, we've heard a lot of feedback from you on your desire to expand the number of Biocode systems on a single network, and also to expand the capacity of hybrid networks mixing Biocode and characterization QTOF instruments. So obviously, as I mentioned, we're very pleased to announce that in Q2 2021, we're able to support up to 6 Biocode systems and 2 Biocode systems with 2 QTOFs on Waters Connect with Unify 1.9.13. Obviously, we talked about network deployments, what they are, and what the specific benefits are in the sense of organizational efficiency, reduced costs, regulatory compliance, and data security. And also, just to highlight that this particular update is one step in an ongoing effort within Waters to understand your needs around networking and scalability. So we'd love to hear your feedback and your questions on this. Thank you very much.